Okay, good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Everything's being recorded right now. That's right. We're all going to be very natural. There's not going to be any, we're going to pretend as if we're not being live streamed. Okay, maybe not as much as that, but okay. Okay, so we have Baruch Hashem returned to the Mishna class here in Shul. And because of our experiences, there have been some interesting things that have come out of the pandemic, and that is that all our shiurim became, they were always being recorded, but they became live streamed so people can watch the videos of it or watch it live. So we have decided we're going to continue doing that. Even after we even once, now that we're back in shul, we're going to continue doing the live stream so that people could again either watch it now or watch the video of it later on. So we have completed the Seder Zeroyim, the section of Zeroyim of Mishnayos. And now we are starting today the new section of Moed, which is the second section of Mishnah, which deals with the with Shabbos and the Yomim Tovim. And today we're going to be starting Shabbos, Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph, Chapter 1, Mishnah 1. And I'd like to dedicate this morning's learning in memory of my mother, Mrs. Shlomis Rabinovich, Shlomis Bas Rabbi Yaakov Eliezer. What we also started doing now at the live stream is learning the laws of Chavetz Chaim at the same time. We used to do Chavetz Chaim right after davening, then put away the tefillin and do it, and then do Mishnayos. But I think it makes more sense to actually, it's worked out, I think, well to combine both Mishnayos and the laws of Lashon Harah together. The only thing is that right now, today, I forgot to bring the Chavetz Chaim, so I'll have to wait for it tomorrow. All right, so Perek Aleph, Mishnah Aleph. We're starting with Masechta Shabbos, the tractate of Shabbos, and a quick introduction, and that is in order for everyone to understand the Mishnah, is that one of the 39 prohibited forms of activity on Shabbos is called hotzah, taking out, which really means to transfer an object from what's called a reshus hayachid, a private domain, to reshus rabban, to a public domain, or from a public domain to a private domain. A public domain, we're not getting into all the details, lots of details about it. But public domain means a street that is widely used by many people at the same time. Meaning, the Fellsway is not necessarily Rishus Harabim. But you talk about the vast pike with the number of cars that are passing through it constantly, plus how wide it is, that would make it into Rishus Harabim public domain. A private domain doesn't mean privately owned, but it means it's walled in. It's a walled in area. That's a private domain. So the Torah prohibits us from transferring an object from a private domain to a public domain, from a public domain to a private domain. Now, in order to transgress the Torah prohibition of hotzah, transferring, which we're going to use that word right now, transferring, which means in either direction. You could be inside going outside, outside going inside. We're going to use the word hotzah, which is what the Mishnah uses, that form, which we'll call transferring. Now, in order to be liable for the act of transferring, meaning going from one domain to another, you have to do what's called an akira and a hanacha. Akira means you uproot, you pick it up from one domain, and then you put it down in the other domain. If somehow or another, if you didn't do both of those things, you're not going to be liable. Which means that if I go ahead and let's say I'm in a private domain, so my akira, my uprooting, so to speak, is I pick it up. Right, I've took it off wherever it's sitting, and I picked it up. Now, if I stick my hand outside to a public domain, and I stick my hand outside, I never put it down. I just stick my hand outside, I never put it down, and I took it back in. I haven't transgressed the prohibition of hotzah, of taking it out. I never put it down into the other domain. According to Torah law, you're allowed to do that. According to rabbinical law, you can't do that. But so these are the details that we need to know for the purpose of understanding this Mishnah. Now, the Mishnah is going to be talking about a case. In order to illustrate this, it's going to be giving an example of a poor man standing outside of a homeowner's house, and he's waiting to receive some kind of tzedakah, some kind of food, some kind of gift. Money, Shabbos can't be money. Food, okay? And what's going to be happening is that we're going to see transferring, right, from inside to outside or outside to inside. So let's begin. So the first thing the Mishnah tells us is like this. Yitziyos HaShabbos, when it comes to the transferings that we do on Shabbos, shtayim shein arba bifnim. you will have two acts that are for someone standing inside. Now, what that means is for the person who's standing inside, which will illustrate, inside means in the private domain. And that person we're going to be saying is doing a hotzah, a transfer out to the public domain. That person has two that are for, meaning two activities that are forbidden from the Torah, that are four activities that are forbidden, that then turn into a total of four activities when the rabbis added two more things that are forbidden. The Torah has two activities that are forbidden for the person inside, and then the total becomes four because there are two more added by the sages in regard to this activity of transferring. Meaning in a situation where the Torah wouldn't hold you liable for transferring, or forbidden for transferring, the rabbi said, no, it is forbidden. And you also have two that are for the person standing outside. Person is standing outside and he's going to be doing a transferring into a private domain or possibly out. He has two forbidden acts that the Torah forbids. Then after the sages added their prohibitions, it became four. That's the starting statement. Now we're going to explain that with an illustration. Ketzad, how is this? Meaning, what's the case here exactly? So the answer is like this. And the answer is we're dealing, as I said before, with a poor man on the outside and the balabayas, the homeowner, who the ani wants to receive something from, the poor man wants to receive something from, is on the inside. So ha'ani omed bachutz ubalabayas bifnim. The poor man stands outside. He's standing in the public domain. Ubalabayas bifnim. And the homeowner is inside his house, which is a private domain. Pashat ha'ani es yadoi lifnim. The poor man extended his hand inside, and he's standing outside in the public domain, and extends his hand inside the homeowner's house. The nasan l'seich yadai shabal habayis, and he put something into the hand of the homeowner. That means that sometimes what the poor man's going to do is he has a basket to collect, let's say, food. So he's standing on the outside. He sticks his hand inside. He extends his hand inside the homeowner's house, and he gives the homeowner the basket to put something into. And the case is, so a poor man has the basket. He's standing in the public domain. He extends his hand inside to the private domain with the basket in his hand, and he puts it into and he lays it into the hand of the homeowner. Got the case? That's the case. The poor man had to. So the case is really like this. The poor man at one point picked up the basket from the public domain. That's how the case has to be. He picked up the basket from the public domain. That was the akira. That was when he uprooted it from the domain, the public domain. He stuck his hand inside the house, which is a private domain, and he put it into the homeowner's hand. That was the hanacha. That was the placing the object down to the private domain. Now, he didn't put it down on the floor of the private domain. The Mishna says he put it into the hand of the balabayas. Now, the rule is that the uprooting, the picking up from the domain or putting down into the domain has to be from a place or onto a place that is daled al daled, 4 by 4. 4 tvachim by 4 tvachim. 4 handbreadths by 4 handbreadths. Your hand, right? Most people's hands are not 4 handbreadths by 4 handbreadths. You know, some people have big hands, but that would mean almost a foot by a foot. Yeah. You know, that's a big hand. Okay, most people's hands are not like that. Okay, so nonetheless, the Mishnah still says if you put the basket down into the hand of the balabayas, the ani, the poor man, as we're going to see, is going to be considered transferring from public domain to a private domain. And that's because your hand, because of the fact that your hand typically holds lots of different size things, has the same significance as an area that's 4 by 4. That's just a rule to understand. Okay, now, so the Mishnah said, Pashat ha'ani es yadei lefnim, the poor man extended his hand inside, and he put a basket into the hands of the homeowner. Or the case could be that he took something from the hand of the homeowner, the heights, and he took it out. Meaning the other case could be that the homeowner, let's say, is holding a loaf of bread in his hand. Okay, the poor man sticks his hand inside, takes the loaf out of the hand of the homeowner, and then takes the loaf outside of private domain and puts it down. So what he did was the poor man, right, now basically did the akira, the uprooting from the private domain, because it was sitting in the hand on the hand of the homeowner who's standing in the private domain. The poor man took it out of his hand. That was the uprooting from the private domain, took it outside and put it down. So in this case, says the Mishnah, ha'ani chayev, the poor man will be liable. What does liable mean? Liable means that if he did it on purpose and he was warned not to do it, they did it anyway, he's going to be liable to capital punishment, to be punished, to be put to death in Bezdin for desecrating Shabbos. Okay, and if let's say the poor man did it unintentionally, he didn't know you're not allowed to do it, he didn't know it's Shabbos. So then what happens then? He has to bring what's called a carbon chatas. He has to bring a sin offering. So chayiv is going to mean in this case, depending on what the situation is, was it intentional? Was there warning? Was it unintentional? But he's going to be liable. He's going to be considered, he has to be obligated in some sense, or liable in some sense for what he did because he transgressed a Torah prohibition, because he did the full act. There was an uprooting from one domain and a placing down in the other domain. Balabayas pater, the homeowner, he didn't do anything. And pater, here's another rule that's important to bear in mind. Typically, when a Mishnah, at least when the Mishnah says you're pater, you're exempt, it means you're exempt from any responsibility from the Torah, but in a rabbinic law, you're not allowed to do it, as we'll soon see. That's not what it means here. Here, the Balabas is not doing anything. He's not involved in anything at all. I mean, he's allowing the person to do it, but he's not doing any kind of act. Okay. Now, next case is the case. So this is where we have the two. These are the two actions from the point of the poor man standing inside that he would now be chayiv. Has now transgressed Shabbos, the forbidden act of transferring on Shabbos according to Torah law. That's what he's desecrated now. Now, pashat balabayas is yad lechutz. Let's say the other case around, the balabayas, he's inside. So the balabayas extended his hand outside, and he put something, let's say he put the bread into the hands of the poor man standing in the public domain. Or, again, the balabayas, the homeowner, took something out of the hand of the poor man who had it in his hand in the public domain and brought it inside. Balabayas chayev ani pater. Now the balabayas is going to be chayiv, is going to be liable, and the poor man is going to be exempt, because now it's the homeowner that did everything, right? In the first case, he picked again, we're assuming this because otherwise he wouldn't be chayiv, he wouldn't have a Torah prohibition, it wouldn't desecrate Shabbos, it wouldn't be desecrating Shabbos according to Torah law. Let's say he picked up the loaf of bread from where it was resting in the private domain. He extended his hand outside to the poor man and put it into the poor man's hand who's standing in the Rishus Harabim. Putting it down in the poor man's hand who's standing in Rishus Harabim is considered putting it down in the public domain. So he now took it from the inside, transferred it outside. Or the other case was where the homeowner extended his hand outside. There was something in the hand, let's say there was a basket in the hand of the poor man standing outside. The homeowner extended his hand outside, took the basket out of the hand from the poor man, and then brought it inside his house and put it down inside his house. Then what he did was he made the akira, he uprooted it from the public domain as it rested in the hand of the poor man who's standing in the public domain, and he then brought it inside to his house, the private domain, and put it down. That's the hanach, that's the putting down in the private domain.
He could have held it all day.
If he would have held it all day, nothing would have happened.
Nothing. All right.
Okay? From a Torah point.
Yeah. From
the Torah point. We'll see what happens in Midrabanan.
Right.
From the Torah point, if he just would take it and just kind of hold it, it wouldn't make a difference. Now, the Mishnah says, in this case, Balabayas chayev ani pater. In this case, the Balabayas is liable and the poor man is pater, because the Balabayas did everything. The poor man didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. The poor man just stood there. He didn't do anything. And therefore, he's pater. In this case means pater. He hasn't done anything. He hasn't even transgressed anything rabbinically. But in this case, the homeowner, he's the one who has either done what's called hotzah, taking something from inside to outside, or he's done hachnasa, taking something from outside into inside. But either way, either one of those transfers are from a public domain to a private domain, or vice versa, and he has transgressed the Torah prohibition because he has he has done the akira, he has uprooted it from one domain, and then the hanacha put it down in a different domain. So these are the two illustrations of when the Mishnah said that you have two for the one inside, meaning two for the one inside. It means two for the person standing in the public domain, and you have two for the person who is standing outside in the public. I'm sorry, you have the person standing inside, which is the private domain. You have two for the person standing outside, which is the public domain. These were the illustrations of the two meaning how you have two ways that the person inside or outside shall be transgressing the Torah prohibition of transferring. In two ways. Each one has two ways that they will be desecrating Shabbos in that manner. And these were the illustrations. Okay, and tomorrow we'll continue with seeing the other two, meaning when we say two that become four, because of what the Rabban and the sages added on to the prohibition of transferring, that although according to Torah law it's not prohibited, they forbade it because, as we'll see, they were concerned that it could lead to doing a full act of transferring. Okay, have a wonderful day.